Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihare. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhara. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhara. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamunadira Vanachavare. Yamunadira Vanachavare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihare. Radha Madhava Kunja Vihara. Pijana Vallabha Girivardhara. Pijana Vallabha Girivardhara. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamunadira Vanacha. Yamunadira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Radha Damodara, Radha Damodara, Radha Damodara, Shri Radhe. Prabhupada Jaya, Prabhupada, Prabhupada Jaya, Prabhupada. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Welcome to this morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. So we are at the end. So I'll have to go at 7:35 because I'm cooking breakfast for Gurudev. So if you can continue with the discussion. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, reading from the sixth canto, The Prescribed Duties of Mankind, Chapter 1, The History and the Life of a Jamil, text 66 and 67. 66 doesn't have a purport. Narayanang namaskritam naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudirayet. Nashtaprayeshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavatutama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki yatas tatash chupaninye nyayato dhanam babarasya kutumbinya kutumbam mandadirayam. Translation. Although born of a Brahmana family, this rascal, bereft of intelligence because of the prostitute's association, earned money somehow or other, regardless of whether properly or improperly, and used it to maintain the prostitute's sons and daughters. Text 67. Yada asau shastram ulangya swaira charyati garhitaha avartata chirangalam aghayur ashuchirmalat yada excuse me yada syo shastram ulanghya swairacharyati garhitaha avartata chirangalam aghayur ashuchirmalat. Would anyone like to try? Yadasya shastram ulanghya swairacharyati garhitaha avartata chirangalam aghayur ashuchirmalat. Yadasya shastram ulanghya swairacharyati garhitaha vartata chirankalam aghayur ashuchirmalat. Okay. Would anyone online like to try? Okay. Let's see. Yet, because I saw this Brahmana, this Brahmana, Shastram Ulanghya, transgressing the laws of Shastra, Swairachari, acting irresponsibly, Atigarhitaha, very much condemned, Avartata, past, Chiram Kalam, a long time, Aga Ayuhu, whose life was full of sinful activities, Ashuchihi, unclean, Malat, because of impurity, Translation: This Brahmana irresponsibly spent his long lifetime transgressing all the rules and regulations of the Holy Scripture, living extravagantly, and eating food prepared by a prostitute. Therefore, he is full of sins. He is unclean and is addicted to forbidden activities. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Food prepared by an unclean, sinful man or woman, especially a prostitute, is extremely infectious. The Jamila ate such food, and therefore he was subject to be punished by Yamaraj. Om Gyana Timrandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitangena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Shumate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarne. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Yadasa Shastamulangya Swairacharyati Garhitaha Avartata Chirankalam Agayor Asuchir Malat. This Brahmana irresponsibly spent his long lifetime transgressing all the rules and regulations of the Holy Scripture, living extravagantly and eating food prepared by a prostitute. Therefore, he is full of sins. He is unclean and is addicted to forbidden activities. So it appears that what you eat affects your whole moral outlook, what you think is right, what you think is wrong. So this isn't really what we're taught in mainstream education, that actually the food, how food is actually prepared in society affects the moral framework of that society. So here we are seeing in the life of a Jamil how his entire life, the morality of his entire life was actually affected by what he ate. So Krishna, he speaks about this extensively in the Bhagavad Gita. So we'll pull up some quotes. It's in the 17th chapter. Divisions of faith. So Arjuna inquired, O Krishna, what is the situation of those who do not follow the principles of scripture, but worship according to their own imagination? Are they in goodness, in passion, or in ignorance? Supreme Personality of Godhead said, according to the modes of nature acquired by the embodied soul, one's faith can be of three kinds, in goodness, in passion, or in ignorance. Now hear about this. O son of Bharata, according to one's existence under the various modes of nature, one evolves a particular kind of faith. The living being is said to be of a particular faith according to the modes he has acquired. And then when Krishna talks about food, then he says, even the food each person prefers is of three kinds, according to the three modes of material nature. The same is true of sacrifices, austerities, and charity. Now here are the distinctions between them. Foods dear to those in the mode of goodness increase the duration of life, purify one's existence, and give strength, health, happiness, and satisfaction. Such foods are juicy, fatty, wholesome, and pleasant to the heart. Foods that are too bitter, too sour, salty, hot, pungent, dry, and burning are dear to those in the mode of passion. Such foods cause distress, misery, and disease. Food prepared more than 3 hours before being eaten, food that is tasteless, decomposed, and putrid, and food consisting of the remnants and untouchable things is dear to those in the mode of darkness. So Krishna is telling Arjuna here that there's a relationship between what you prefer to eat, so how you actually go about trying to maintain your body, um, what you prefer to, what kind of regimen of activities that you want to actually perform to achieve your goal. So austerity can be defined that way. Um, so in doing some kind of, in wanting to achieve some kind of goal, you have to sacrifice. So whether it be you want to, uh, here we are producing milk. Um, you have to wake up early in the morning, milk cows twice a day. Once a cow comes onto the property, uh, that's it. You have to wake up twice a day, and you have to figure out how you're going to milk this cow until it retires. Um, Similarly, if you want an education, you have to wake up early. Even if you don't like to wake up early, still you have to. So the way you do it, it's based on the faith that you have. Uh, and the faith is trusting, uh, Prabhupada defines faith that is trusting in something sublime. So some kind of excellence, a form of excellence that you're attracted to. That excellence may be, uh, maybe wanting to be very conversant in knowledge, having the gratification of being able to answer various questions. That excellence might be beauty, wanting to always remain youthful, um, and the other opulences that we find in the absolute truth. So, so how our faith is actually affected, there is a relationship to what we actually eat. So it's not just you are what you eat. Um, what you eat also affects what you believe. And so this is why Prabhupada constantly questioned that, okay, if you, we live here in America and the predominant religion is Christianity, so why do you slaughter cows? So if your guru is saying, which is Jesus Christ, is saying, um, thou shalt not kill, why are you slaughtering cows? So if you say that you are a follower of your guru, then when you have faith in him, then you should not do this. Um, so we can see that because this law, this injunction of the Bible has been transgressed, then people aren't so much interested in actually developing a relationship with the Lord. So yes, people may say, "Oh, okay, we go to church, we can have, now like Christian churches have become, uh, oh, there's a charismatic side to it, where they, have their bands and they're performing, etc. And it feels good, like when people are there. But as soon as the service is over, it's more like about the social scene of it. They're not actually trying to cultivate a relationship with the Lord. Why? Because this law has actually been transgressed, that there is killing of animals. So what they're eating is actually affecting this the degree of success or the degree of progress in wanting to love the Lord with all their heart and with all their soul. So similarly in Krishna consciousness, our faith. So as we know, the first uh, process, there are nine stages of development in Krishna consciousness, um, beginning with Shraddha, and our faith can also be affected, is also affected by our relationship with prasada. Mm. So there are foods that we avoid. Um, so yes, we don't eat meat, um, But there are other foods that we avoid because they are in the mode, they are in the lower modes. And here the Yamadutas are saying that a Jamila was addicted to forbidden activities. Now, when you look at the reward system in the brain, basically what motivates you, so as we said, faith is trusting in something sublime. So there's some kind of reward that you are anticipating when you perform a particular activity. Um, so how you eat will also affect how this reward system asserts itself. So in the last 75 years, there's been great study of how the brain actually works. And when you read about it, you can see, oh, this is what Krishna is describing in the Bhagavad Gita, the lower self, um, and what he's talking about in terms of like taste. So when we speak about taste, it's not just on the palate, but something that you're really attracted to. So the reward system, I just forget the technical names of the brain, of the parts of the brain, but it's basically the front, the middle, and then the stem of the brain. And so basically when you about to there's like a craving stage. So when you anticipate some kind of reward, um, then this reward, this pathway, gets flooded with dopamine. So basically, they found that if if you actually have too much pleasure, then there's an imbalance. So the brain, what it's trying to do, it's trying to always create a balance. It's called homeostasis. And so if you constantly eating, then what the brain tries to do is that it pushes on the side of pain. So where you feel pain, where you feel pleasure is actually in the same pathway. So that's why Krishna, he says that one should tolerate happiness and distress as they would the winter and summer seasons. It arises only from sense perception. So this is the discovery that they found, is that pain, physical pain, and material pleasure, they actually are being experienced in the same place. So the implication of this is that in the brains of addicts is that um, there's they're pushing on too much on the pleasure side, and so what the brain does, it tries to balance that out. And so if you overeat, as we've experienced on a festival day, if you still like to overeat, I sometimes overeat. Not even on a festival day, because here at Nagari, like practically every day is a festival in terms of the opulence of the prasadam. But yeah, it happens. Either you overeat on cheesecake on Ekadashi, or chocolate cake on uh, on a birthday or whatever. But basically, you will feel pain. There is a point where it actually stops being pleasurable. And so that's the brain trying to say, okay, we need to balance it. So the pain that you experience is okay, it might be physical, but it's also an absence of this dopamine. So it stops firing in this reward pathway. And so then you feel some pain so that you can actually stop and just like, whoa, don't do it again. So so this is why Prabhupada, he would recommend that for devotees who actually want to make progress, you want to have a relationship with prasadam where you are honoring prasadam. So you're not eating prasadam in a way to become addicted. And in terms of foods, there are foods that are actually addictive. Yeah. So in this book called Dopamine Nation, they made a discover. Well, they're basically measuring how much dopamine is secreted in the brain based on different substances that you consume. So at 50%, it's chocolate. 100% sexual intercourse. 150% is nicotine. 250% is cocaine. And then the substance that is like having sexual intercourse 10 experiencing 10 times the pleasure from sexual intercourse is methamphetamine. So drugs that contain methamphetamine. Yeah. So highly, highly addictive. So 1,000%. And so basically this addiction to it is that uh, there's just yeah so much of dopamine is secreted in the brain that you just want to just do this activity all the time. So here with a Jamil, this is really what happened, was that by eating the food prepared by a person in the low modes, particularly prostitute. She was, as we know, illicit sex, it destroys cleanliness. And so, yeah, he just became addicted to sinful activity. So he wasn't, so when you're dictated by the lower modes, you're just thinking about your senses. So it's your state of consciousness is not one in pranamaya. In the Krishna book, Krishna speaks about 5 stages of development of your consciousness. So there's anamaya, where you're just thinking about, just like a child, you're just thinking about what to put in your mouth. So what motivates your activity is what can I actually eat. And then when you develop further, you think, oh, okay, well, this food that I'm putting in my mouth, it's prepared by someone. It's prepared by my mother, my father, my older siblings. So then you begin to consider, oh, well, my existence is dependent on them. And so then you develop to a higher stage, which is pranamaya, where you consider um, that your existence is dependent on others. And then when you then consider that, okay, even though these people that are dear to me, they are dying. I get older, this one is dying. Um, I can also see that, yeah, and this is causing me a great deal of suffering. So why am I suffering? How can I actually end all suffering? And then you question, okay, if my grandfather had a father, and that was my great grandfather, who was his father? So these inquiries then uh, bring you to a stage of Gyanamaya, where you're inquiring about the root of your existence and what maintains your existence. And then higher than that is that as you are inquiring like this, then you begin to experience what you are reading about, transcendental subject matters, and you get experience of the spiritual reality. And so you come to Vijnanamaya, and then when you're performing activities that will maintain that existence, that spiritual existence that's transcendental to dopamine in the brain, uh, foods that are addictive, and you're performing those activities, then you feel pleasure. And then when you're always trying to maintain that pleasure, pleasure that is higher from the dopamine in the brain, from the lower self, pleasure that's higher than just feeling pride that I know things, pleasure that's on the intellectual level, um, and that even pleasure that transcends your conception of who you think you are. Uh, I'm thinking, oh, I'm an engineer. I'm thinking I'm so competent, or I may be thinking I'm a good cook, or I'm so experienced in this particular activity. Pleasure that transcends all those designations. In other words, transcends the false ego. and it's pleasure that's coming from a place of serving. So here we are very fortunate at this time that we have Devamrita Maharaj, Gurudev, we have His Holiness Jayadvaita Maharaj, we have Radha Damodar, and the Gopi assistants, we have Shishinitai Gaura Sundar, we have cows. We're just surrounded by transcendental personalities, and it's just a transcendental environment. And when you get pleasure from that, yes, my goodness, I feel so blessed. Um, so this is the stage of Anandamaya, the fifth stage of development of your consciousness. And yeah, so what you eat will bring you down. Yeah, it's that powerful. So addiction, when they study basically there's something called neuroplasticity. So depending on how you get your pleasure, your brain actually changes. So with a Jamil, if we had to do an MRI when he was still a young boy, performing, being a very astute Brahmana, and then 88, 80 years later or so, or 60 years later, now he has a 10-year-old, I mean, a little son, and he's in his 80s. The brain is different because he was getting his pleasure in a different way. Yeah. So, so as dear devotees, we should remember that um, you are what you believe is what is affected by what you eat, and there are recommendations. Prabhupada, he would say that there's foods that are addictive, and we should make observations. What are we addicted to in terms of how we are eating? And yes, and that'll also affect the quality of your hearing as well. So as we know, if you eat late at night, there's not much digestion available, and so that uh, affects your quality of sleep because the insulin is spiked, and the body was working so hard. So, for example, uh, if you eat with so say if I eat at 7 o'clock and I go to bed at 9, typically it takes like 3 hours for your insulin to come down. And so I will think I slept for 6 hours, but there's 1 hour where my body was still working, trying to actually bring down my insulin. And so I come to the temple room and I'm like, why am I falling asleep while trying to chant? So yes, so you are what you eat, and that affects what you believe, your faith, and indeed it affects uh, your progress in Krishna consciousness. So are there any, I have to go now, but maybe we can, questions or comments? Yeah.
Different foods belong to different worlds. That's true. But then also, once you open it, doesn't it become all transcendental and doesn't really depend on the taste of it?
Uh, well, there are foods that, yeah, it's a good question. So there are foods that aren't offerable to Krishna, but then the question is, what about foods that uh, are offerable, but they're also addictive? So yes, it's true that it's all transcendental, but when you're eating, your body just does its thing. So in terms of dopamine and all of that. So when you are transcendental, then those biological effects, you can actually transcend them through yoga. So for example, if you look at the extreme case uh, of Prahlad Maharaj, he was given poison and he offered the poison to Vishnu and he accepted it. So in terms of how the body reacts, the body was doing its thing. So he should have died, but he didn't. So when you look at the yoga system, is that even persons who don't eat, they're able to keep the life air circulating just through yoga. So they're actually transcending the biology of their body. So when you're very well situated in yoga, in one sense, what you eat, it actually won't affect you because you're that powerful. But if you're not well situated, yes, you will. If you say, okay, Krishna, chocolate is, I've offered this chocolate and therefore it's transcendental, and you keep eating chocolate, definitely. Your relationship with prasadam will be one of an addictive mindset towards it. You'll just be offering it for the sake of eating, as opposed to offering it because this will uh, actually give pleasure to the Supreme Lord. Yeah. So, yes, the lower self is what's coded in our body and its biology. But if you follow the recommendations by the acharyas and Prabhupada that certain foods are addictive, even though they're offerable, it's recommended that you try to avoid them. Just like, for example, with the senior members in our society, they have a diet, but they can't eat like Damodar, having deep fried, savories and chutneys and chili every day. They have a diet, So why are they following a diet? You could argue that, oh, you should have this. Why aren't they having the maha? Well, it's because, biology. It asserts itself. Yeah. I don't know if there's any other inputs from that.
So does it appear that if food is offered to Krishna, let's say it contains some sugar,
Yeah,
it will create some dopamine,
yeah, yeah.
so he was addicted to certain type of especially
Um,
what about you mentioned different levels of dopamine produced by different foods.
yeah,
I'm just curious about sugar, how much? What is the level? Was it
sugar, huh?
100% or 2%?
Yeah, they didn't in that chart they didn't measure it, but it would be yeah, so they didn't really measure it, but it would be lower than chocolate. But there's something called the bliss point in food processing. This was discovered by a chemist who then made the soft drink called Dr. Pepper. And after that, yeah, they now have the bliss point in practically all foods. There's a certain amount of sugar that you put in that's just right, that just keeps the person wanting to have more. So yeah, so it's addictive, but not like chocolate. Yeah, so chocolate is pretty high. Yeah, 50%. That's half. Yeah, it's half of having illicit relations. Yeah, it's pretty high. Okay, I gotta go. I don't know if you devotees want to continue the discussion. There's Tarko Prabhu wants to speak, and he will speak on sugar because sugar is pretty controversial. Uh, yeah. Okay, Tarko Prabhu, the floor is yours. The devotees. Oh, listen. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I actually did not want to talk about sugar. I
Yes.
actually had a question for you.
Oh, okay. All right, Prabhu, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just curious to know if you can cite an example of Srila Prabhupada talking about um, foods which are offerable but which are addictive.
It's chocolate. So the question is an example that Prabhupada spoke about which foods are addictive but are offerable. So chocolate, Prabhu, that's the example that comes to mind.
Okay, I have not have no recollection of hearing Srila Prabhupada say that. I can say though that used to be, when, during the time Srila Prabhupada was with us, we generally understood chocolate to be unofferable. There were some instances of devotees offering chocolate and arguing that there is no reason for it not to be offerable, but ISKCON-wide, the general standard was that chocolate was not considered offerable. It later became controversial, and to this day there are devotees arguing that there's no reason that it should not be offerable, but we never offered chocolate back in the day. Not in any temple that I was ever in. Don't remember Srila Prabhupada ever speaking specifically about chocolate, nor can I remember, or even I was just searching around. I can't find an instance of Srila Prabhupada talking about addictive foods other than meat eating. He talks about being addicted to meat eating, but as far as offerable foods being addictive, I'm not aware of any instance of that. But any offerable food, even if it may be offered, it depending upon how it's prepared, it may not necessarily be accepted and cannot be regarded then as prasad. The preparation with regards to prasad is pretty much everything. What Krishna accepts is the bhakti, not necessarily the ingredients themselves, but the attitude, the mood with which that offering was prepared. And the understanding that I imbibed from Srila Prabhupada was that when a particular food is offered with devotion and accepted by Krishna, it becomes transcendental, and it's actually non-different from Krishna, and there is no adverse effect. It cannot even be contaminated. You may see if you attend the Rath Yatra festival in Puri, sometimes they are distributing prasad by throwing prasad into the crowds, and so prasad is sometimes falling on the street, and devotees will not hesitate to pick that up from the ground and honor it, because they understand that prasad cannot be contaminated. It's also a matter of faith. Srila Prabhupada spoke about this. If you think that that some prasad which has spoiled is not going to be healthy for you, and then you eat it, you may very well get sick. But if you have faith in the transcendental nature of prasad, then you may eat prasad in any condition and not get sick. As far as sugar, of course, is described by Srila Prabhupada in many places as being sattvic, and also it is understood to be medicinal. It is prescribed in Ayurveda. The Vedas, of course, emanate from the breathing of the Lord. Dhanvantari, who was a plenary expansion of Vishnu, one of the Leela avatars, inaugurated the system of medical science, medical treatment, and was expert in the Ayurveda. The Ayurveda prescribes sugar for many purposes, a great many purposes. It is one of the essential ingredients in um, preparations like Chavan Prash, which devotees may be familiar with. It's a general tonic, very, very powerful, very effective. Sometimes we see that devotees take pains to try to search out a source for Chavan Prash that does not have sugar in it, which is ludicrous from the perspective of Ayurveda, because it's an essential ingredient in the formula. And if you change the formula, you don't have the same effect. But many devotees have this idea that sugar is somehow poisonous or just, generally intrinsically bad for you. And that's actually not the case. The fact is that everyone is constituted differently. Some people can eat any amount of sugar with no ill effect. Others, far less than that, and they'll experience sugar shock. Their pancreas can't metabolize the sugar effectively. Another person with a healthy pancreas has no problem with any amounts of sugar, but how you consume sugar is also an important factor. If you have something which is predominantly sugar by itself, then sugar is very quickly and easily digested and absorbed. Immediately, your the glucose level in your bloodstream goes very high, and then the pancreas kicks out a whole bunch of insulin to metabolize that glucose. So there is initially a rush of sugar high, and then a low, and an overproduction of insulin causes the glucose level in the blood to drop too low, and then you lose your energy. Sugar is essential for bodily metabolism. All of your bodily organs run on sugar in one form or another. There's different types of sugar, but glucose in particular is what fuels all of the operations in your body. So a certain amount of glucose is required. If that drops too low, then you can't move. You become very very weak and tired. Your brain, especially, central nervous system, consumes more glucose than any other organ in your body. Sugars are necessary for the action of muscle tissue. So any kind of bodily movement requires sugar, but your brain especially requires a good amount of sugar, more than any other part of your body. It burns a tremendous amount of that fuel. Too little sugar, and you'll be very tired and lethargic, physically weak, and there will be mental effects. You can even become depressed. You can have the development of mental illness resulting from a deficit of sugar. Generally, the contemporary science about these things is that you require sugar, but getting a huge influx of pure sugar abruptly can disrupt things. And so the general advice is that you consume sugar in the form of foods which are digested and assimilated more gradually. So carbohydrates are digested and broken down into simple sugars, but the process takes longer. So the sugar enters the bloodstream more slowly. All kinds of foods are digested, and the net result is sugar, but carbohydrates in particular. So that includes all kinds of grains, and there are carbohydrates in practically anything that you eat. So that's one source of glucose for your bodily metabolism. Um, um, a lot of devotees have issues with um, what they refer to as refined sugar. Um, and molecularly speaking, there is actually no difference between refined sugar and other forms of sugar, such as turbinado sugar or so-called raw sugar. Um, the um, the sucrose molecules are identical. The only difference is that there are trace elements of um, other molecules are also present, mixed in with the sugar. Um, uh, and in as far as digestion, the speed at which raw sugar is digested and assimilated relative to refined sugar, there's little difference. It doesn't really make that much difference. Um, a more significant factor in the consumption of sugar is how you consume it. So if it's part of a meal, it will be assimilated more slowly and have far uh, less deleterious effect. You won't have that big glucose spike in your bloodstream abruptly, and then countered by a sudden deficit of sugar resulting from an overproduction of insulin. So um, moderation is the one big key. Sugar by itself is fine, but you should not overindulge. That was Srila Prabhupada's advice with regards to sugar. Um, Overindulgence in anything pretty much is not good. Too much sugar and you'll certainly have problems. But small amounts of sugar, and depending upon how it's formulated, the effect will be different. So there are sugar is used specifically prescribed by our acharyas, Srila Prabhupada. There are preparations that we offer to the deities that are made with sugar. So there's all kinds of milk sweets, for example, burfi, sandesh, and other such things. They are specific formulations. Mostly they are Ayurveda would categorize them as rasayans. Um, Rasayans are a powerful medicinal formulation that is life-giving. It is a tonic to the body. It improves your health and energy, your vitality, even your longevity, your resistance, and your power of healing. Um, if you have, one piece of burfi, that may be medicinal. If you pig out on a whole bunch of pieces of burfi, you may experience some sugar shock. Honoring a palm full of kheer can be medicinal, depending upon your constitution, and having a tall tumbler full of kheer can blow you out. I can tell you that I don't know. I remember in the I think it was around 1974, we were getting in the Henry Street Temple, Brooklyn, New York. We were getting 400 gallons of milk from Gita Nagari every week, and it was we're making a lot of milk preparations. It was a lot of milk to consume, and I used to make two 40-gallon pots of kheer. I had to start right after Mangala Artik, and I'd be sweating over these pots the entire day to have this kheer ready for the Sunday feast. And it would be served in these big, tall tumblers, maybe about I don't know, 8 inches tall or so. Um, and devotees and guests would come back for seconds and thirds. They'd consume a lot of it. It was very sweet and incredibly delicious. Um, well caramelized. There, it was nice and brown and good brown color from slow cooking and very, very flavorful. I don't really remember anyone having any ill effects from that, even though we consume quite a lot of it. But we were consuming a lot of other things as well. And when you have your stomach filled largely with other non-sweet items, adding some sweet items there, even in larger quantity, it's not necessarily a problem, depending upon, as I say, your particular constitution, because everyone is different. Some people can consume a large amount of sugar with no problem whatsoever. Other people cannot. But there are specific formulations. Milk is supposed to be consumed with sugar. Milk is, Srila Prabhupada prescribed for us having, depending upon your body, the average male is supposed to have 2 cups of milk per day, ideally in the evening, and it should be sweetened with sugar. The result of that is it becomes a specific type of formulation which will direct itself to the brain tissues. Once again, the brain runs on a tremendous amount of sugar. And preparing milk in that way, you get all of the nutritious benefits of the milk to the brain and producing finer brain tissues, as Srila Prabhupada explains. If you have a female body, if you are a nursing mother, in particular, or a growing child, then Srila Prabhupada prescribe larger quantities of milk consumption. But always, milk is prepared with some sugar and served in that way. And historically, I don't remember any devotees ever complaining of a problem from sweetened milk. But sometimes preparations are made that are just chock full of an awful lot of sugar, cakes and other things which are not traditional Vedic preparations, incidentally, but big, Western style foods that sometimes have sugar as a major component. And devotees do sometimes have a lot of problems when they consume them. But once again, it's an individual matter. Not everyone is the same. To demonize sugar in general, as though it's always bad for everyone, is just false. Sugar can be very good. When administered medicinally, it is particularly good. It is very often used in Ayurveda, and Ayurveda is the most authoritative science of human health and medicine that there is. It comes from it is the factory issued, the factory authorized care and maintenance manual for the human body. It comes from Krishna. Krishna does not make mistakes. He knows what he's doing. He created these bodies through the agency of Brahma, and he gave the science of how to maintain them, how to cure illnesses, and so on. So sugar can be medicinal. But medicines in general, any medicine, can also be poisonous if it's misapplied. If you don't use a medicine properly, if you don't follow the prescription, if you take it to excess, it can have a harmful effect rather than a beneficial effect. So medicines have to be taken according to the proper prescription. And in the case of sugar, it is primarily that you don't take it in excess. People tend to go overboard because they just very much like the sweet taste. They like that, and so they want to have more, and then more, and they consume too much. A little bit in moderation, regulated in that way, not harmful, not a problem. And when formulated according to authorized prescriptions, it is medicinal and not harmful. Anyway, since the issue of sugar was brought up, I thought I'd mention that. But more importantly, I wanted to say something about, oh goodness, we've gone overtime. I spaced out. I'm sorry. I'll stop. Jai Shri Shri Radha Damodar. Hare Krishna.